All right, the recording should have started. And Deandra, welcome. And want to tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Thank you. My name is Deandra. I have been with the FAA for, I think it's close to 17 years now. I came into the agency from kind of a different place. I came from Capitol Hill, where I worked for a member of Congress and I handled his transportation and infrastructure committee work. And I came into the FAA into the Office of Government and Industry Affairs. So I am not a technical person. I am not an engineer, but I have found a place in this particular area of policy. And I spent the first 15 years or so either doing government affairs, and then I went to our Office of Airports where I did grant compliance, which sounds really boring, but I absolutely loved it, for 9 years in both headquarters and in the region. So drones is a new world for me. It's a lot of fun, and we're all kind of blazing this new path together. So let's go to slide 3. I want to get started on the presentation.
All right, and so you are seeing the slides, correct?
Yes.
All right, perfect. I'm going to go ahead and shut off my video, but I am, again, I'm here, so.
So I want everyone to raise their hand and give me their pinky promise that they will not refer to this provision as Section 350. And the reason why I always say that is it's usually us, FAA employees, we have developed a very bad habit of referring to this as Section 350. And I'm going to explain why it's not accurate. Section 350 refers to a specific provision in the FAA's Reauthorization Act of 2018 that was Public Law 115-254. Unfortunately, Section 350 wasn't confusing enough, so Congress amended it with a provision in the 2021 National Defense Authorization Act. So if you are just reading Section 350, it means you aren't reading the whole law, and this creates confusion because those amendments were significant to how we interpret the law. So it's really important that when we talk about this section of law, we refer to it as the educational use of drones or drones for educational or research purposes. Let's go to the next slide. When we read the two provisions together, it looks like this. So the text from the original law is in black and the amendment is in red. So I want to decode it. First, it cross-references 49 United States Code Section 44809. This is the exception for limited recreational operations of unmanned aircraft. Section 44809 says that a person may operate a small unmanned aircraft without specific certification or operating authority from the FAA, as long as that operation adheres to 8 specific limitations. So we commonly refer to this provision as the recreational flyer rules. So this provision extends the ability to operate a small unmanned aircraft without specific certification or operating authority from the FAA for aircraft systems operated by essentially 3 big buckets of users. So a clear way to think of this section is these types of operations can be done outside of Part 107. In other words, it needs to be consistent with the requirements for rec flyers. Next slide. So Congress explains what they think an educational or research purpose is, but we are finding that it's not quite so straightforward. As I explain this, I'm going to use the word schools to describe those 3 big buckets the law includes. I know it's not a precise term, but we're going to get to those 3 buckets on the next slide. So how can schools use drones outside of Part 107? Schools can instruct students. So that's great, but Congress doesn't tell us if the instructor needs any specific level of education or training. Schools can conduct academic or research-related uses that have been approved by the school. This itself is very broad. It might include preparing students to take their Part 107 exam. It would probably include throwing a drone into a jet engine. Schools can conduct activities undertaken by the school as part of a research project, including research we, the FAA, ask schools to do. So the FAA could ask the school to throw a drone into a jet engine. I mentioned that because we're going to do that this summer. I'm a little excited. And then there's this last one. Other academic activities approved by the school. This is very, very broad. I'm going to circle back to this in a few slides because we've gotten some complicated examples. Next slide. So let's talk about who the educational and research users are, because this is where things start to get really confusing. Congress has defined 3 types of educational or research users. These are the 3 buckets I mentioned. So programs that are operated by institutions of higher education, and they give us a definition for what that means for educational or research purposes. Established junior ROTC programs for educational or research purposes. I have a little bit of information about JROTC on the next slide because, again, Congress did not give us a definition for this. And bucket number 3 is educational programs chartered by a recognized community-based organization or CBO. What is not explicitly mentioned here? Non-JROTC K through 12 educational programs. Next slide. Just kind of a side note. According to the U.S. Army's website, the Army operates JROTC programs in more than 1,700 public and private high schools, military institutions, and correctional centers throughout the U.S. and overseas. I didn't look up all the other branches, but they're probably similar to or less than the Army. According to Wikipedia, it was under 4,000 units for 6 of the 8 branches. Those numbers did look a little old. But something to keep in mind is all of these programs can be done under the exception for limited recreational operations of unmanned aircraft. Next slide. Okay, so what about K through 12? Unless it's a JROTC program, K through 12 programs are stuck with door number 3. These programs have to be chartered by a recognized community-based organization or CBO. And before you ask, no, Advisory Circular 91-57 Charlie is not out yet. It is still going through what we hope is the final approval process. So the FAA has not officially recognized any CBOs yet, but we know that's coming. And based on the guidance that we've gotten from our friends in the FAA's Office of General Counsel, once that AC comes out and we have a clear process for recognizing CBOs, these schools in bucket number 3 are going to need to comply with the law. So they will have essentially 3 options. They can apply to be recognized by the FAA as a CBO. They can ask a CBO the FAA has recognized to charter them, or they can operate under Part 107. But because of the age requirement, that's probably not going to be a realistic option for a lot of programs. Next slide. If you're like me, you're probably wondering, what does chartered mean? Unfortunately, Congress doesn't tell us. So we've had hours of meetings trying to figure that out, and we still haven't really reached any consensus about this. I think that in the end, that's going to be something that may be defined by CBOs themselves. So you could have different CBOs with different chartering processes and requirements. For example, a CBO could say that in order for us to charter your program, your school needs to adopt our safety guidelines, incorporate our curriculum into your program, and pay this fee. We don't know. That's something that we're just going to have to wait and see. As I mentioned before, these schools can apply to be recognized as CBOs themselves. So this might make sense for a large school district or state that has a lot of these programs, but they will have to document information as outlined in the AC and submit that request to the FAA. I also don't have any good answers about the timeline for when all of this will happen. So the AC is going through the final we hope, the final approval process. And once it's out, the FAA will need to communicate about it. And this is going to be a little trickier than it sounds. We don't keep lists of all the schools that are using drones for educational purposes. So we have a list of schools that participate in Assure in our Center of Excellence. We have a list of you all of our UAS CTI schools, but we don't have a list of all the K through 12 programs. So getting this information to the schools that need it the most is going to be harder than communicating with some of our more traditional stakeholders like airlines or airports. So I'm just going to be very honest with you all. I don't like this section of law. I think it could be detrimental to the K through 12 programs that are using drones to teach a wide variety of academic subjects, provide students with employable skills, and simply inspire young people to fall in love with aviation. But unfortunately, the FAA doesn't pay me to like the law or only enforce the sections that I like. So we're stuck with it. Next slide. Before I talk about enforcement, I do want to cover the last part of the law. This is the section that covers statutory construction. This is legalese for, we may not have done a good job of writing this, but don't let that impede you, FAA, from taking any action needed to address safety. So regardless of what the law says or permits, we don't let educational users do whatever they want just because they have this special provision. They still have to operate safely in the NAS, and the FAA has the right to establish any rules or standards necessary to maintain safety and security in the NAS. So let me give you a good example of how this applies. Educational users are not permitted to fly in controlled airspace or zero grid areas without an airspace authorization. This provision is not some get out of jail free card. But this little section doesn't help us with those big questions on how we transition K through 12 programs that have been established under our old guidance into this kind of new reality we're headed towards. Next slide. So this transition is a topic that has generated hours of internal discussion at the FAA. And I know you all are probably out there thinking like, Deandra, why are you spending so much time on this K through 12 issue? We're community colleges, we're universities, why do we care? We're already covered by the statutory language. And the reason why I want you to care is you are leaders. You are leaders in the drone sphere. And you may get questions about this provision of law from educators in the K through 12 field. So we think it's very important that you understand this change is coming and what it's going to mean. I mean, because to some degree, this could impact your ability to recruit for your programs. So I want to talk a little bit about compliance because this is an area that keeps me up at night. No one wants to read a headline that says the FAA has killed some school's drone program. Okay, first of all, it would be embarrassing. And second, we, myself included, have a vested interest in a future generation that thinks aviation is super cool and actually wants to come work here because I'm going to retire someday. So we know there is going to be a period of time during which we try to transition these K through 12 schools with established programs into compliance with the law. Again, I can't tell you how long that period of transition is going to be. So this is something that we are going to have to balance in terms of the timing of when the AC is published, where we are in the academic calendar, and our ability to aggressively communicate about that change. We also need to consider the number of potential CBO applications that may be submitted against the amount of time it takes to review the application with the human resources that we have actually doing that work. Lastly, we need to think about all of this in terms of the FAA's compliance program. Schools that originally came to us for guidance prior to establishing their program, they're probably not checking in with us every year to see if the law or if our guidance has changed. So initially, our focus will be on education. And again, nothing precludes us from addressing any operation that creates a safety issue in the NAS. But I do think it's going to be hard for us to explain why K through 12 schools may have to change how their drone programs are set up when they've been conducting them safely up to now. There are some wild cards, some variables. Congress could change the law again, or we're just going to have to figure out what time period that transition is going to look like. So stay tuned for that. Next slide. I do want to go over some frequently asked questions. And again, you're probably thinking, why should we care about this? You know, and I do think that this could impact, you know, how your programs move forward in the future. So when it comes to using drones for educational purposes, there are two important things you need to find out in order to provide the correct answer. So one, what kind of school or program is it? And two, are there any specific questions or scenarios that need to be addressed? Next slide. One of the more common questions we get is, how do we set up our program? And since we know that there are going to be changes that K through 12 will need to comply with, we are starting the education now. So we have a frequently asked question that covers this change to the law and also explains our 2016 legal interpretation. This is how most of the programs are set up now. Next slide. For you all, for colleges and universities, we know what the law is now, and we don't expect that to change, but your programs are the ones that are generating some of the more interesting scenarios. So we have to caveat this answer. Next slide. So here's that caveat. Academic activities or flights which result in using drones for commercial purposes fall outside the legal provision that allows drones to be used for educational purposes. And this is why it's really important to ask if there's some specific scenario involved, because we're finding that there are some academic programs or requirements that start to bleed over into commercial activities. So for example, compiling a bunch of photos that your students took, putting them into a book, and selling that book at the university bookstore, that starts to bleed over into a commercial activity. There are also some possible curriculum requirements or activities that inadvertently lead to commercial operations. So be especially careful when it comes to agricultural activities. If you have questions about this, please, 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 please talk to us. You can email Diana or Elena, or you can send it directly to our support center. And I have that information on a slide towards the end. Next slide. So we've also gotten this question a lot: which schools are eligible to use drones for educational purposes? Kind of a trick question. That answer is both easy and hard, because you know what? All schools are eligible, yay! But again, the law creates three big buckets that a school or program has to be siloed into. So it takes you really back to step one, to that first question: what kind of school or program are we talking about? As I mentioned, we don't keep a lot of lists. We're not keeping track of every school that is using drones for educational purposes. So next slide. We also get a lot of questions about what certifications and trainings are needed. And the answer is, that depends. Again, you go back to step one: what kind of school or educational program are we talking about? The law says we should consider the instruction of students as a recreational purpose. So recreational flyers now need to take trust. So this requirement now applies to both students and instructors. Currently, we do require individuals teaching K through 12 programs to be certified remote pilots. And since we are still working on the CBO recognition process, we can still require this. But as we transition and start to recognize CBOs, that may no longer be the case. And with this question, step two also becomes more important. What is the specific scenario or question? Are there activities or flights that start to bleed into that commercial arena where both the instructor and the student should probably be operating under Part 107? So again, I am the worst FAA speaker ever because I have no straightforward answers for anything for you. Next slide. Yeah, I definitely don't have a straightforward answer to this one. You might be wondering if it's better for your students to fly under Part 107 or the rec flyer provisions. And that really depends. So it's not the FAA's job to evaluate a school's curriculum or review their syllabus. So the best we can do is outline factors that we would encourage schools to consider. Next slide. The exception for limited recreational operations is open to all ages. So obviously this is a great option for those K-12 programs. Everyone flying under the exception has to take trust, but that is available for free. And you have to follow all of the requirements of 49 USC 44809A, but there is no requirement to read, speak, write, or understand English. Next slide. Under Part 107, there is a fee to take the remote pilot knowledge exam, and you have to be at least 16 to become a remote pilot. There are different drone registration requirements under Part 107, and that can also be more expensive for folks. But it opens the door to conduct those flights that are commercial in nature, and it gives students a professional credential. Next slide. Again, I am the worst speaker from the FAA because I have no good answers. The way the law distinguishes between operations and flights is important. So we need to know what type of school or program it is. That tells us the path that they need to follow. But in many cases, the specifics are important because we know there are activities that start to push into that commercial arena. Lastly, please, 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 please share your questions with us. This helps us develop better frequently asked questions and materials that we can share with folks. In fact, we just met this morning to talk about some questions that have been coming in. So that really, really helps us. And I know personally for me, that helps me think about, you know, if Congress gave me a magic wand and let me change the law, how would I want to do that? So, and lastly, under the FAA's compliance program, our goal is education. We want you to comply with the law and to fly safely. We are not looking to penalize you when you come to us and ask for help. So please do not ever feel like if I ask this question, they're going to know that we've been doing it wrong and we're going to get in trouble. If you come to us and you tell us you're not going to get in trouble, we're going to help you fix it. That is our goal. Next slide. So I'm going to talk about something that offers a lot of good news. Yay! This is a different section from the 2018 reauthorization bill. So Section 625 created 2 new aviation workforce development programs. Next slide. Section 625 gave the Department of Transportation the authority to establish 2 new grant programs for aviation workforce development through 2023. And Section 1743 of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2020 added an additional category to eligible applicants for the aircraft pilots program. The program for aircraft pilots supports proposals that generate interest and prepare students to become aircraft pilots, aerospace engineers, or UAS operators. The types of organizations eligible for these grants, it's not limited to just traditional educational institutions, air carriers, labor organizations representing aircraft pilots, flight schools, and state or local government entities can also apply. The program for aviation maintenance and technical workers supports proposals that generate an increased interest and prepare students to pursue aviation maintenance careers. The types of organizations eligible for these grants is also much broader than just traditional educational institutions. Both programs were appropriated funds in FY20 and FY21. There's $5 million for each program for 2 years. So it's a total of $20 million in grants. So super exciting, right? The FAA's Next Gen office was asked to implement this new grant program. And standing up a new grant program is actually a lot of work. But in January of 2021, they put out their first notice of funding availability on grants.gov, and they received over 300. Oh, where'd my notes go? They received over 300 applications. Next slide. And you can just kind of slowly scroll through these next 3 slides. These slides contain information about, these are just the different drone related programs that were awarded grants for the FY20 money. And the descriptions that you see here, these are not complete. This is like what I could summarize to get all these awesome programs for drones to fit onto 4 slides. But you can see that drone related programming competed pretty well in both of these categories. Next slide. I think we go to slide 28. Okay, this is the best news. This is the best part of this presentation. Okay, on April 26th, the FAA published the notice of funding availability for the FY21 grants. Yay! Next slide. You can find those on grants.gov. And remember, there are 2 grant programs, right? There's the workforce and the maintenance. The deadline to apply for both of these programs is June 10th. Next slide. Oh, Deandra, we have questions, but remember, I am the worst FAA speaker and I have no answers. I do have resources for you. The Office of Next Gen hosted a pre-application technical assistance webinar earlier this month. If you missed it, that's okay. You can watch it on YouTube. They've also posted a PowerPoint with a ton of great information. If you are interested in applying for these grants, I strongly recommend going through the PowerPoint and watching the webinar because it goes through a lot of details that will help you with that grant application. The timeline is we hope to get these grants out by the end of our fiscal year, which is September 30th. So I want to wish everyone who is going to apply the best of luck. I fully anticipate to see more CTI schools listed when we do the next set of slides. And that's it for my presentation.
All right, Andrew, thank you very much. That was a lot of information, and we've actually got some really great questions in the chat here. So we're just gonna kind of swing back up to the top here. So Everett was asking about can a 107 permittee or a teacher with a permit request and receive a Lance authorizations their students can fly under. I see Steve gave a really great answer about that 1-to-1. And then if I recall, I believe recreational flyers can apply for Lance now as well.
Yes, but if you are going to do that as an instructor, you may want to contact the support center to get some suggestions on how to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we had another question from Dave. So how does trust certification of students and teachers apply to K-12 education programs? Since there are no standards for UAS flight instruction, can a teacher with a trust certificate provide instruction to students in K-12?
So if you're flying as a recreational flyer, that means that everyone who is flying as a recreational flyer needs to adhere to the requirements of 44809. 44809 requires everyone to take a safety test. That safety test has been developed. It's out on the street. That is trust. So everyone flying as a recreational flyer under 44809 needs to take trust. If you're instructing K through 12, that should be the first lesson. Everyone take trust.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with that. And I'd say that if the question is more along the lines of of teacher competency, that type of thing. There's nothing out there that says that you don't have to have a CFI or anything like that to teach for UAS.
So we have a old legal interpretation that requires, if you're teaching K through 12, we want that instructor to have the Part 107.
Yeah, and
Now,
I concur. In fact, my own advice to folks when I'm talking is that if you are teaching, UAS at any level, 107 is the way to go for a to have a quality understanding, but B, your insurance provider is going to be the big one there.
very true. Now, once we start recognizing CBOs, those K through 12 programs are going to fall under that bucket of chartered by a CBO. So it will really be then, what does that CBO require? But those are requirements that we will be looking at very closely when we're approving CBOs.
All right. Here's actually a really, really great question that I haven't seen before. Dennis Dye says, first of all, thank you for sharing so much information, Deandra. But at Southwestern Indian Polytechnic Institute, we believe it's important to offer Native American students access to education and training in UAS. You mentioned that essentially all schools are eligible. Unfortunately, they found that they are a major exception. It seems that other federal policies prohibits them from incorporating drones in the education and research programs because they are part of the Bureau of Indian Education in the Department of Interior. Are you familiar with these policies, specifically DOI Secretary's Orders 3379 or Executive Order 13981?
I am not. I will have to look into that because I am very curious as to how it would preclude them from doing something with drones. And if that's the case, we need to work with the Department of Interior to get that changed, because a lot of tribal communities are using drones to fill in transportation gaps. They're really embracing this technology. That's interesting because it's a different tribe, but I know Choctaw Nation has a huge STEM program that they're doing in Oklahoma.
They may not be using that educational carve out.
They may not. But again, for K through 12, it really just, right now, it would just allow you to fly as a recreational flyer. So I'm not entirely, I'll have to look at that, write that down.
So looking at the grants here, are those grants available for tribal entities?
I believe they are. I need to look and see.
I believe I found out that the maintenance one is actually not available to current Part 147 schools.
Oh.
So I thought I saw something on that the other day, but
it's wider than most traditional workforce grants that I've seen, but I would need to look at that specifically. The other way to get around that may be to partner with a state or another entity.
Okay. Here's another good one. So can a high school partner with a college to come under the higher education rules if their students are concurrently or dual enrolled in a college course taught by an adjunct college instructor at the high school?
I would believe so. Okay. Because if they're enrolled in a college course, then it's really the university. Does the university permit, and where are you flying? Can you fly at wherever that high school is? But yes, if they are enrolled as at the institution of higher education, then it would fall more clearly. It's not really a K through 12 program if the college is running it.
Okay, that makes sense. So
I would argue for that one for you all.
Let's see. So for the question that we had regarding the Native American school, there is a gentleman in the comments, Lance Brady, who says that he's familiar with that and may be able to reach out, and he provided his contact info. So
excellent. Yeah, we got to get that resolved.
Let's see. We had another one about the college and the high school type thing. So I think we kind of addressed that there. Steve, you're awesome in the chat. Very, very active answering questions. So thank you there.
Steve is my get out of jail card.
Let's see. Okay, so there's some question about there's 50 plus high schools in Wisconsin that'll be registering for drone competition next fall, with several being K-12 that are beginning to build a program. Could the university be listed as get defined as a CBO and then charter high schools underneath them?
Yes.
Okay.
From what I've seen, there's no requirements on who can come in and request to be a CBO. You have to have the documentation for us to review. You have to have good safety guidelines for us to recognize you as a CBO. So I do think that is an option for, a state could put together safety guidelines and could request to be recognized as a CBO and then charter all the programs in a state. A large school district might opt to do it. Could be a community, could be a college. Yes.
Very good. And then most competitions that I've seen, at least at high school level around UAS, are indoor type. So in that case, I don't want to say it's a free for all because your administration and your insurance will play a part in it. But the FAA is not a part of that decision-making process at that point. Although I will say you should still do so safely. So, all right. Any other last minute questions for Deandra here before we move on? Because I know Alina has some great updates for us. All right. I'm not seeing that anything else in there at this moment, Deandra. I don't know if you can hang out, but you are more than welcome to. And we'll go ahead and we'll transition over to Alina George, who needs no introduction here because she's just awesome and everybody knows her already. So.
Hi, everybody. And thank you, Zach and Chelsea for having me today. And Deandra, thank you for that. I even learned some things. That was awesome. And I know that the group who's been working on all this educational stuff has been working super, super hard. So thank you again for that. All right, well, we've been really busy lately. We have our 90th MOU awaiting FAA signature, and we have received 3 questionnaires in the past 2 weeks for the UAS CTI. That's very, very exciting. We are hoping to have 100 schools with the UAS CTI by the fall. So there's a lot that's going on. As you see here, these are all the different things that have been going on. I've been in Orlando. Dan and I have been in Orlando for the AUVSI Exponential. I know that we saw some of you all there. We have also, the other thing that was happening in Orlando was the FAA Drone Symposium, which was excellent. Of course, UAS CTI schools. As I said, we're bringing in more and more every day. And the first of our regional events just happened. We actually got back on Sunday evening. So we were in Omaha, Nebraska. Nebraska does not have any drone pros yet. We're hoping that we have gotten a couple of them, recruited a few, and we were with UNO, which is the University of Omaha in Nebraska, or University of Nebraska in Omaha, and they are a CTI school. So they hosted our very first Droning On regional event. A little bit more about Expo. We were asked to have an all-female booth. So that was wonderful. And we did ask other SMEs to stop by and answer questions as needed. Mike O'Shea, Steve Pansky, Derek Hufty, the folks from the waiver team. But pictured here, this is the booth. It was starting from the left, Jennifer Audette, Diana Robinson, myself, Autumn Alderdice, and Trisha Fantinato. So we had a great time. And for those of you who were in Orlando, I hope you had a good time too. Also in Orlando, we did have a social at American Social with a bunch of different drone pros that were in town, as well as the UAS CTI school representatives who were also attending Exponential. So we had a really, really, really great time. We've got folks in these pictures here from Drone Up, from Embry-Riddle, from Zephyr, Florida Air Solutions. We also had Don Zoldi there from Dawn of Drones. And I don't know if you can see, if you look very carefully, you might be able to see Zach Nicklin. All right, so I sort of mentioned we did our very first regional event in Omaha. It was at the University of Nebraska in Omaha. We worked with them to host this event and with the regional office. So this was the Central Region. On Thursday, we focused specifically on students. On Friday, we were focusing on public safety and government. And on Saturday, we had a drone fair with lots of demos. So we had a great time. There were a lot of lessons that we learned, and we're really excited for the next ones coming up. So just for you all to know, our next ones, we are going to be in New England in September, at the end of September. We haven't figured out an exact date yet, but we are going to be reaching out to all schools in each of these regions that are coming up. So keep an eye out on your email. We would love for you to come and present, to come and attend Droning On in its entirety. And like I said, look out for those emails. So next September, we've got yes, that is the Northeast region. And then in October, we've actually got two. We've got Great Lakes region, and we are going to the Southern region as well. Great Lakes, I believe, is going to be in Dayton, Ohio, and Southern is going to be in Raleigh, North Carolina. So as soon as I've got more exact dates for you, I'll let you know. But we're super excited to actually be going out and talking to people. This is just a compilation of cute pictures. I'm not just saying that because I'm in one of them, but you know, to make sure that people got to the correct buildings on the college campus, which, as you all know, they're pretty big. We put down some chalk, and look at these wonderful drones. I did not make any of those, but they were very cute, and I'm very happy that we had them. These are just a couple of more photos from the event itself. We had a really big group Thursday and Friday for our educational day and for our public safety and local government day, as well as the regional administrator and deputy administrator. They were there to talk to everybody, give some opening and closing remarks, and provide their support. We also had folks from our Beyond program come and present. So that was really exciting. Next slide. I'm doing my own slides. So, so this is the new map that is going to be up soon. This has all of the drone pros that you can, of course, tap into as if you're looking for adjunct professors, anything like that. I know that NCAT put out that really great survey earlier this year about which drone pros would be open and willing and able to teach as everybody's looking for more staff, more professors. So this is a really great drone pro app. All right, the real reason that I'm here today is Drone Safety Day. It is coming up June 18th, and that is a Saturday. This is going to be our big call to action. So we are focusing on the different societal benefits of drones and drone safety for everybody. This is going to be one day of drone events across the country. It's really grassroots, and by which I mean we have come up with the messaging, but we are looking for you all to help push that out. So please let me know if you've got any questions. There's a great email for you. It is dronesafetyday@faa.gov if you've got more questions. I'll go to the next slide in just a second, but I want to really focus in here on NCAT. They are the ones who put together the website for Drone Safety Day. You can submit events on there, and you can look at any of the other events that are going on within the US. And actually, we have at least one event that is happening outside of the US. So there's a lot going on. This is the address, the web address for the site. I'll pop into the chat in just a couple of seconds, or when I'm done, really. So here's your important information for Drone Safety Day. It is Saturday, June 18th. That is this year. It's coming up in, wow, just a couple of weeks. We've got a little bit less than a month, one day less than a month, since it's the 19th to today. NCAT is hosting the website, and we have put together the options for any one of you to host an event. You can have that event in person, virtual, hybrid, or you can have an activity, something that people can print out, take home, do on their own time. Our focus areas this year are economics, education, emergencies, environment, and equity. Of course, you can come up with your own focus area if you are interested in doing that. There are any number of events that you can do. So please don't let anything that we've written down stop you. Your imagination is really going to be key here. So you can have all sorts of things from safety seminars or webinars. You can have how-to sessions, Q&A discussions, any kind of job fair, perhaps, STEM competitions, fly-ins, any sort of talk that you would like. If you want to just talk about your program and have an entire event just on that, please go for it. We're super, super excited about this. That looks like the end of my slideshow. I do want to bring up a couple more things. So I'm actually going to start sharing again, if that's all right, Sax, plural. So this is the FAA website. Again, I will pop these links into the chat for you. There are a couple of things on here. There is, of course, the link to the NCAT website. And this is our very specific safety message that we've got this year. It is fly right. So the right is actually an acronym for everything that you need to know to get started flying. Register your drone, interact with others, gain knowledge, have a safety plan, and trust and train. Really take the trust. So with that, we've got lots of images, different graphics that you can download on our website. These are the logos specifically, if you want to put that in any of the material that you are going to be creating. And we have great graphics for that slogan, fly right. We've got an overall and then one for each of the letters in both rectangles and squares. And at the end of the week, we are also going to have a playbook for you on this website. So this goes a little bit more into the 5 different focus areas, and you can also find that on the NCAT website. So I'm just going to go ahead and put these links here into the chat. Let me make sure I'm sending it to everyone. All right. So that is the FAA website, and here is NCAT's. All right. Are there questions? Any sort of questions that you may have? Oh, I didn't see anything in the chat.
I didn't either at this moment, but I will say that if you are planning on hosting a drone day event, reach out to your local drone pros. I guarantee that they will want to help to be a part of it. Part of the drone pro mission is outreach. So there's always another resource there that you can, you know, add into your bucket. So
Absolutely. And I just put the email in there, dronesafetyday@faa.gov. If you've got any questions, or if you're not sure about what kind of event to put on, if you've got like a little bit of an idea, let me know. Just go ahead and write that email. We're checking it every day. Happy to support you in whatever way we can.
all right, I appreciate that, Alina. Thank you very much for documenting all the great stuff that y'all been doing. Like you said, I got the chance to see y'all in Exponential. That was great. And then all of the events that you've been going to since then. So
You've been busy.
yes,
Gonna be
excited to
busier
see the-
still. So
It's
we're coming to
exciting
your
see the
city, I
next ones.
promise.
Yes. As Alina said, if you have any questions regarding Drone Safety Day itself, the email's in the chat there, dronesafetyday@faa.gov. Once you get onto the NCAT website, if you have any questions specifically about how to load things onto the site, things like that, it's pretty user friendly. You know, I jumped on there the other day, and the team here at NCAT did a really great job putting that together. But if you do have any questions there, there is a website for, or I'm sorry, an email address for questions regarding the website itself, actually on our NCAT page. Let's see, Eugene, you missed the survey. We can go ahead and get you a link. And then Alina, the new Drone Pro location map. I know we've got one on the NCAT page.
Yes. So great question. I believe, and sorry, this is really Diana's forte, and she's not here right now. But I believe that map is always updated with the new drone pros as those come out. So the map on NCAT will be updated with the new numbers of drone pros.
Awesome, that's great. And then we'll work together and we've got the survey results from folks. And then of course, Eugene, if you'll shoot me that email, I will get that survey out to you. But we'll work on getting all that integrated into one map. So that way, when you roll over one of the drone pros, you'll get that information that we collected as far as you know, what your specialties are and things like that to better match you with, you know, folks in your areas looking for people out in the field doing the work to come in and talk in the classroom or help out with events. So. All right. Well, everybody, we're at the top of the hour. If there's any last minute questions, we certainly take them. Outside of that, I really appreciate everybody jumping on today, all the great questions. Between Alina and Deandra, there's a lot of great information, and they provided with some great links in the chat there. So make sure that you do save the chat. If you don't know how to do that, if you look right next to your chat box, you should see the 3 dots. And if you click on that, the very first option there should be to save chat, and that will make it so you can keep all that great information. So once again, thank you very, very much for your time, and you guys have a great day, a great weekend. Start planning those drone day events, get them up on the website. Even something small is better than nothing at all. So thank you all very much. Have a great day.